Welcome, dreamers, to another journey through time's hidden corridors. I am your guide through the dreaming historian, where ancient mysteries whisper their secrets to those who dare to listen. Tonight, we venture into Angkor Wat's secret passages, a tale shrouded in the mists of Cambodia's sacred jungles. Here stone and spirit intertwine, and the great temple stands not only as a monument to kingship, but as a celestial mirror of the divine. Beneath its grand towers and radiant bas-reliefs, forgotten corridors slumber, untouched by sunlight, waiting for wandering souls to uncover their truth. Before we embark on this mystical journey, if these whispers from the past resonate with your soul, let your presence be known through a gentle light, and join our circle of dreamers by subscribing for more nightly journeys into history's hidden realms. Share with us, fellow dreamers, from which corner of the world you are joining tonight's contemplation. Let our global community of mystery seekers connect across time zones as we drift together into the past. Now, settle into comfort, close your eyes, and let the ancient voices guide you into peaceful contemplation. Long before modern travelers arrived in Cambodia's forests with cameras and curiosity, Angkor Wat slumbered beneath a sea of green. Jungle roots coiled like sleeping serpents through its sandstone corridors. Canopies of fig and kapok trees veiled the temple spires in an emerald twilight. To the world beyond, it had become legend. But to the silent earth, it still breathed. In the 12th century, the Khmer Empire flourished, stretching across what is now Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. In its golden age, this land was not yet called Angkor. It was Yasadarapura, a spiritual capital dedicated to cosmic order, governed by divine kings who were seen not as rulers, but as gods upon the earth. It was in this age that Suryavarman II Akina, great ambition and mystic leaning, commissioned the construction of Angkor Wat, not merely as a political gesture or architectural marvel, but as a sacred embodiment of the universe itself. The temple, they say, was not built as a place of worship in the ordinary sense, but as a model of Mount Meru, the sacred mountain at the center of the cosmos in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. Each tower represented a peak, each moat a surrounding ocean, each gallery a layer of the celestial realm. But within the measured geometry of its grandeur, there existed things not as Eli explained. Local monks whispered of sealed doors carved with apsaras that danced for no one, of staircases that descended into the earth and vanished, of corridors misaligned with the outer structure angled ever so slightly as if pointing to something else, something unseen. They spoke of the temple's false doors, elaborate stone carvings made to appear like portals, perfectly symmetrical, guarded by devatas yet utterly solid. To the faithful, these were not mere decorations. They were thresholds to other realms, and they whispered still of the vanished priests who once walked barefoot in the cool dawn mist, their chants vibrating through the lotus-shaped towers. Some believed these priests had passed not into death, but into the hidden heart of the temple, a heart no map had ever charted. As you drift gently into this story, imagine the world as it once was. Imagine standing before Angkor Wat before sunrise, the sky dark violet, the stars still shimmering above the palm trees. The temple's reflection hovers in the still moat, like a memory. The air is warm, laced with jasmine and dust. You step closer, barefoot on ancient stones still cool from the night. To your left, a gallery of celestial dancers frozen in motion. To your right, a corridor cloaked in shadow. One path is wide and welcoming, filled with dawn's light. The other curves inward, toward a space where sound disappears. You choose the quiet. You step into the shadowed corridor, and the temple begins to remember you. Each step takes you deeper into silence. The earth, the walls seem to breathe. Lichen glows faintly on the stone, like moss touched by moonlight. Here, the carvings change. The stories they tell are not for crowds, but for initiates. No grand battles, no parades of kings, only symbol serpents eating their own tails, lotuses opening in fire, suns with hidden faces. One panel shows a monk kneeling before a door of light. The door is carved into the wall behind him. Just another false portal, it seems. Or perhaps not, because when your eyes adjust to the dimness you see what you should not. A faint line where the stone is shifted, an outline just beneath the surface, a passage sealed, not by collapse or decay, but by deliberate hand. Who closed it? And more curiously, what lies beyond? Angkor Wat was once the center of spiritual rites, few today understand. It was aligned with the stars, particularly with the rising sun on the equinox. When the morning light strikes the temple's central tower and floods the innermost sanctum. But why such precision? Scholars speak of sun cults, of connections between the king and the solar deities, of calendars carved in stone. But the monks, whose chants still echo in the forest air, speak differently. They say light was a key, and if light was the key, then shadow was the door. You descend further, following the shadow corridor, and the temple seems to shift around you. Sounds soften, your breath slows. You are no longer in a structure built by hands, but within a mind, perhaps even a memory. There are no lanterns here, only instinct. And then, at the end of the corridor, a niche opens, a small room, no more than 3 paces across, empty, but for a single stone in the center worn smooth by centuries of silent prayer. Above it, a shaft of light filters down from an invisible slit high in the wall. The beam strikes the stone like a spotlight, though no fire burns. This, the monks say, was the chamber of initiation. Here, seekers came not to speak, but to listen, to lay their hands upon the warm stone and hear not the voice of gods, but the silence of truth, a silence older than empires, older than language. You sit now, letting your breath match the temple's stillness. The stone beneath you seems to pulse. You wonder if it is your own heartbeat or the memory of those who once knelt here, seeking something beyond doctrine. And in this space, this silence, you begin to feel it too. A presence, soft and ancient. It does not speak, but it remembers. Outside, the jungle stirs. Birds call. The sun begins to rise. Tourists in modern clothes walk past carvings without knowing their meanings. But you remain here, in the passage not marked on any map. You've stepped behind the temple's gaze, into its dreaming self, and there are many more doors to open. The corridors of Angkor Wat are not only built of stone, they are woven with intention. As you linger within its hidden chamber, the silence still blooming in your chest, you begin to sense what cannot be seen with hurried eyes. This temple was not designed for the eye alone. It was built as a cosmic map, a mirror of heaven pressed into earth, a divine code laid down in stone and shadow. The ancient builders did not simply carve for beauty, they carved for resonance. Step into the outer galleries now, moving slowly along the long colonnades lined with each scene tells a story. Gods and demons churning the sea of milk, battles between celestial armies, avatars of Vishnu descending into mortal realms. But look closer. Beneath these divine tales lies something older. The proportions, the spacing, the repetition of shapes, these are not mere artistic flaws. They are formulas. The width of each gallery, the height of each tower, the length of each axis. These match celestial measurements. From the very heart of the temple, lines radiate outward like the petals of a lotus, aligning not only with cardinal directions but with star paths traced in the night sky over centuries. Angkor Wat is not oriented toward the east. Like most temples, it faces west, the direction of death, of dusk, of the god Vishnu, who rules over cosmic balance and transcendence. This westward orientation is more than symbolic. It turns the entire temple into a pathway of passage, a journey from birth in the east to spiritual release in the west, a map for the soul, not just the feet. Now walk with me, dreamer, down the western causeway, where the pilgrims once approached with lotus offerings and whispered prayers. Feel how the temple rises slowly with each step, ascending toward a sacred center. This elevation is not by chance. It follows the ancient belief that to approach the divine is to climb physically, spiritually, cosmically. The first level represents the world of men, the second the world of the spirits, the third the realm of the gods. Each stair you ascend is a shedding of earthly burden. Each stone beneath your foot is an invocation. The Khmer architects understood the sacred language of numbers. The central tower of Angkor Wat, for instance, stands at 65 meters, surrounded by 4 smaller towers, making 5 in total. 5 peaks, echoing the 5 peaks of Mount Meru, the center of all universes. The galleries are laid out in concentric squares, each proportioned according to ancient formulas found in Vedic texts and cosmological manuscripts, long since forgotten by most of the world. This was a geometry not of engineers, but of seers. A stone block at Angkor Wat is not just a stone. It is a note in a chord, a frequency set to resonate with both the heavens above and the chambers of the soul within. And the very spaces between the structures, the voids, are just as sacred as the forms themselves. Let us now pause in the Hall of 1,000 Buddhas, or what remains of it. Once, this vast space was filled with golden images, offerings, and the scent of sandalwood curling toward the stars. Today, it is empty, stripped of its splendor by time, war, and theft. But its emptiness is not devoid of power. It hums, it calls. The walls here reflect the light at strange angles. As you move, shadows fold and unfold like ancient wings. The ceiling, once painted with constellations, now reveals faint traces of lotus blooms and spiraling suns, almost invisible, as though revealed only to those who walk without haste. And in the center, a curious alignment. On the equinox, the rising sun sends its golden shaft through the central tower, piercing the sacred sanctum and casting light onto a precise spot within this hall. Not an altar, not a statue, but a blank stone, a void. The light, they say, was not meant to illuminate the gods. It was meant to awaken the seeker. Such alignments could not have been accidental. Modern archaeologists using satellite imagery and LiDAR scans have found that Angkor's temples are laid out across the Cambodian plain in vast patterns, aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and planetary orbits. The temples form a mandala, not just an individual building spot in the land itself. And Angkor Wat sits at its heart. Some believe the temple is not merely ancient, it is ageless. Built on the ruins of older structures, which in turn were built on even older mysteries, stretching back through time like a spiral into prehistory. Beneath the sandstone, some suspect a foundation of laterite blocks not visible from the surface, laid in patterns matching star maps from epochs long past. Could these have served as energy channels or conduits of memory? We do not know, but the design endures. You walk now toward the central sanctuary, where the great tower rises like a lotus bud, reaching. The steps are steep here, almost vertical, as if demanding effort, intention, surrender. This was no casual space. Within this tower, at its very core, lies a chamber, empty now, though once it held a sacred linga, a symbol of generative power, of balance between form and void. But there is something stranger here. The chamber's dimensions correspond to units of time found in ancient Indian cosmology. The yuga cycles, the kalpas, the breaths of Brahma, a sacred clock, carved not from metal, but from mountain. You sit here again, allowing the air to settle around you. High above, the tower tapers to a point, drawing your gaze upward, and as your breath slows, you feel it once more, that quiet hum like wind moving through a conch shell, or memory stirring in the bones of the earth. Perhaps you are not simply visiting Angkor Wat. Perhaps Angkor Wat is visiting you. A place built not to be observed but to awaken. A place where each step echoes a syllable of a forgotten mantra, and where the spaces between those syllables hold the true wisdom. As the stars wheel above this ancient land, and the roots of the jungle embrace the stone like fingers in prayer, the blueprint remains, waiting not for understanding but for presence. There is an old saying among the forest monks who have made their homes near Angkor: the temple shows what it wants to show, no more, no less. This is not a statement of metaphor alone, for within the veils of Angkor Wat, sandstone walls and shadowed passageways, strange occurrences have long been recorded. Doors that disappear, staircases that spiral into dead ends one day and open chambers the next, whispered paths that bend in ways no map can capture. The locals call it the corridor of shifting stones. It begins, as many such things do, with a legend. Long ago, before the Khmer Empire had reached its golden age, it is said that a solitary monk named Seniha came to the jungle. He was not born of noble blood, nor trained in royal court. He was a wanderer, a seeker of silence, who claimed that the temple had called him in dreams. In those visions, he walked through endless galleries filled not with carvings, but with stars. Each step echoed like thunder in the void, and at the end of this walk he always found a closed door, made of light and mist. When he awoke, he traveled for many days, sleeping beneath banyan trees and drinking from hidden springs, until at last he arrived at Angkor Wat. But the temple he found was not yet the one we know. It was a collection of beginnings, foundations waiting for form, stones piled like offerings to the future. Still, he waited. Years passed. The temple rose. Seniha remained. He'd never sought favor. He'd never entered the sanctum. He only walked the corridors, barefoot, humming low chants known only to him. The builders came to know him as the walker between walls. They said he was touched by the devatas carved into the pillars, and that he spoke in his sleep with beings no one could see. Then, one morning, he vanished. Not into the forest, not into death, but into the corridor that, until that moment, had never existed. The workers told of hearing a new echo, a path between the northern gallery and the central sanctuary, where before there had been only solid stone. They followed the sound, lit torches, and entered a hallway none had carved. At the far end they found only his sandals, and the stone behind them sealed once more. Since that day monks have whispered that Angkor Wat breathes, that its stones are not fixed, but alive with memory, shifting according to the purity of heart and clarity of purpose. Modern explorers dismiss this, of course. They speak of collapsing ceilings, optical illusions, uneven terrain, but even they admit peculiarities. Measurements taken one year do not always match those taken the next. Photographs show differences in angles that no erosion can explain, and LiDAR scans those eyes from the sky have revealed anomalies. Hollow spaces where there should be none, doorways with no access, corridors that lead both somewhere and nowhere. You walk one now. The air is cooler here, though the sun is high outside. Moss clings to the corners. The walls are narrow, breathing a kind of hush into your ear. Every 10 steps, the carvings shift. At first, they are familiar. Lotus blooms, apsaras in dance, coiled nagas, but then something changes. The figures face away from you. Their eyes look not out but in. The deeper you go, the more you feel it. A pressure, soft but persistent, like memory pressing against your chest. There are no lanterns, no guides, only your breath, the gentle echo of your own footsteps, and the scent of stone warmed by centuries. You're not sure if it was there before. The arch is shaped like a flame, narrower at the top, flaring outward, and within its frame is not another room, but a wall. Not smooth stone, but a carved image of a figure sitting in lotus pose, palms resting open, a faint smile playing on lips worn soft by time. It is Senaha, the same monk from the old tales. His eyes are closed, and in his hands he holds a spiral, not a physical object but a pattern, a cosmic curl etched into stone. This spiral, the monks say, is the key to the corridor of shifting stones, a symbol of movement, of cycles, of sacred recurrence. It appears only to those who walk with intent, not direction, to those who come not to find but to listen. The moment you gaze upon it, the corridor hums again, low, steady, ancient. You turn to leave, but the path is no longer as you remember. The way behind you has changed, not drastically, just enough. A new alcove appears. A pillar is missing. The distance is wrong. But there is no fear, only wonder, because this is what the temple teaches, that time is not linear, that truth comes not in words but in patterns, that sometimes the path shifts not because the temple is changed but because you have, in that moment, you understand the wisdom of the ancients. That sacred architecture was never about building monuments to be admired. It was about creating spaces where transformation could unfold, where silence could teach, and where the soul could spiral inward toward the center. You take another step, the walls begin to soften in your vision, the carvings blur into clouds, and then, for a brief moment, you are not in a corridor, but in the cosmos. Stars drift across sandstone, galaxies spiral within columns. The temple breathes in rhythm with your own heart. You close your eyes, and the spiral remains. When you open them again, you are in the sunlight. The corridor has released you, but part of you still walks within it forever. Above the towers of Angkor Wat, the sky is not empty. It is a living tapestry, a celestial scroll read by kings, monks, and seekers alike. To walk the galleries of this temple is to step into a story written not only in stone, but in starlight. The ancients of the Khmer Empire were not just architects of the land, they were readers of the heavens. They believed that to understand the order of the stars was to understand the order of the soul. And so, Angkor Wat was not only built on sacred ground, it was built in sacred alignment. Tonight, let us tilt our gaze upward. Let us trace the starlit blueprint whispered into sandstone by those who saw the cosmos as a mirror of the divine. Begin, dreamer, with the equinox. Twice a year, the sun rises directly in the east and sets directly in the west. On these 2 days, balanced reigns day and night equal, light and darkness poised in perfect reflection. It is on these days that Angkor Wat comes alive with purpose. From the western entrance, as dawn breaks, sunlight spills across the moat and surges along the temple's central axis. The golden light passes through the main entrance, climbs the long causeway, enters the inner sanctuary, and strikes a sacred point at the heart of the temple. Not just any point, but the very center of the central tower, where once a golden statue of Vishnu stood in still meditation, awaiting the fire of morning. It is not accidental. The temple's main axis to west is aligned with celestial precision. Modern astronomers, with their satellite data and computer models, have confirmed what ancient priests knew by heart. Angkor Wat is a solar temple, a temple that watches the heavens, not for prediction, but for communion. You walk that axis now, not in haste, but in reverence. The stones beneath your feet glow faintly in memory of the equinox sun. Even now, with the moon high overhead and the sky painted in indigo and stars, the temple holds the imprint of those perfect moments of cosmic balance. In the northern gallery, you find carvings not only of gods and battles, but of heavenly beings, star beings. The old monks call them figures with lotus eyes and flame-tipped crowns, holding discs marked with concentric rings. Some believe these discs represent chakras, others, the sun and the moon. But a few see in them the wheels of time, the cycles of Venus, Mercury, Mars. For Angkor Wat, they say, was more than a temple. It was a cosmic observatory, a calendar in stone. And in the movement of stars above, the Khmer saw messages. They knew the lunar calendar by heart. They tracked eclipses and transits. The great moats surrounding the temple may have served not only as spiritual barriers, but as reflective pools, mirrors to watch the heavens, still and undisturbed by wind or leaf. Even the number of steps of towers of windows, these are not random. There are 108 steps to the upper gallery. There are 72 major towers across the Angkor complex. These numbers appear again and again in sacred geometry, in Vedic mathematics, in the architecture of temples from India to Indonesia. Numbers sacred to the rhythm of the universe. You find yourself now in a smaller chamber, almost hidden, accessible only through a narrow passage lined with tiny columns. Here an inscription barely visible is etched along the wall. It speaks of the churning of time, of ages that rise and fall like the tides. It ends with the words, "To see the stars is to remember the self." In this stillness, you feel the weight of that truth. The temple, you realize, is not looking upward. It is inviting you to do so, to remember what the ancients remembered, that our stories began not on the earth, but among the constellations, that the body, like the temple, is aligned to the heavens, that the spine is a staircase, that the breath is a rising sun, and that the inner sanctum of the soul is not separate from the stars but carved from their same fire. Now step into the open courtyard. Above you, Orion rises. The 3 stars of his belt line up almost perfectly with the central towers of Angkor Wat. Coincidence or memory? In Egyptian temples, too, Orion reigned. In the Mayan pyramids, the Pleiades were kings. In Cambodia, the Milky Way is called the River of the Sky. And Angkor Wat, with its central moat, its stone bridges, its towers reaching ever higher, it reflects that river in every way. A bridge between earth and sky, a mirror, not of appearances but of essence. You close your eyes again. Let your breath become the stars. Let your thoughts slow to the speed of moonlight. Let the temple rise around you like a sky made of stone. And listen, for in the silence, the stars speak. They do not shout. They do not hurry. They only shine, and in their light, the temple waits, not to be visited, but to be remembered. There are places within Angkor Wat where words have faded, yet meaning remains, not in ink nor in parchment, but in the dance of light across carved sandstone, in the way shadow fills the curve of a lotus petal, in the gentle dip of a step worn smooth by the feet of 1,000 pilgrims. This is where Angkor's truest language lives, in stone and silence. Tonight, we enter the script that does not speak aloud. We begin in the Eastern Gallery, where the walls are alive with motion. A procession of dancers moves across the sandstone, their bodies arched, fingers extended in gestures so precise they seem to vibrate with sound. These are Apsara celestial nymphs, guardians of joy and spiritual ecstasy, known to dance between worlds. Each is different. Each has a name once spoken by the priests, now lost to time, but their meanings remain, like music lingering after the last bell is rung. As you move among them, you feel their rhythm. You do not need to know the language to feel the intention. This is not decoration, it is devotion. Each carving was a mantra, a movement frozen in time, meant not to be read, but to be felt. Further along, the dancers fade. In their place, warriors rise, rows of soldiers and kings, weapons drawn, chariots in full gallop, battles etched with such precision, they seem to unfold before your eyes. Here is the churning of the ocean of milk, a vast bas-relief where gods and demons pulled the serpent Vasuki around Mount Mandara to stir the sea of eternity. It is a tale of cosmic balance, of struggle and reward, and it covers an entire wall, almost 50 meters of narrative in stone. But even this story is more than myth. It is a meditation. The mountain is the spine, the serpent is the breath, the ocean is the mind, clouded with illusion, and the nectar that rises from its depths Amriti is wisdom. This is how the ancients taught, not with lectures, but with space, not with noise, but with presence. You enter now the inner gallery, near the temple's center. The air cools. The silence deepens. In the corners of the walls, faded Khmer script still clings to the stone. Few today can read it, but some monks still memorize the verses, passed down not by page, but by voice. One such inscription, half arrest, half remembered, reads, "He who walks without seeking shall arrive. He who speaks with stillness shall be heard." The stone is the veil, the silence, the truth. These are not riddles. They are instructions. You sit beneath one such inscription. The wall beside you is plain and adorned by figures or stories. Only a simple lotus, carved small and low, nearly at ground level. You reach out, your fingers touch the curve of its petals, and in that moment, a memory not your own rises. A vision, perhaps, of a monk, cloaked in saffron, sitting in this very spot. Not moving, not chanting, just breathing, his eyes closed, his hands open. Around him, the world dissolves. The stone does not disappear but becomes transparent. The corridor beyond it glows with gentle light, and he walks not with feet, but with presence into a realm untouched by time. The vision fades. You remain, but now you understand. The carvings of Angkor Wat are not static. They are mirrors. They show the seeker not what was, but what is. What always is. In the Hall of Echoes, another space deep within the temple, your footsteps return to you like soft questions. This hall is known to those who visit as a place where sound bends. Clap your hands, and the air carries the note 3 times, like the beat of a divine heart. But deeper still, in the space few ever find, lies a niche. There is no carving here, only a single crack in the stone. And yet the monks call it the scripture of silence. They say the crack was not an accident. It was made deliberately, at the birth of the temple, a scar of humility, acknowledging that no matter how perfect the design, no creation can ever contain the whole of the divine. And so the silence becomes the final verse. You rest here now, letting the unseen verses of stone and time wash over you. The breeze that flows through the corridor is scented with dust and frangipani. A gecko clicks in the distance. And beneath your palm, the stone is warm. It holds 1,000 years of stories, but it only tells them to those who listen without expectation, who read without language, who sit in stillness and remember that the truest scriptures are not written, but lived. In Angkor Wat, There are doors that lead nowhere, carved into the stone with exquisite care. They appear just as real as any passage archways outlined by sacred flames, flanked by guardians with serene faces and rigid stances, framed by vines of sandstone lotus. Yet when you step closer, they reveal their secret. They are sealed, solid, unmoving, false. But in this temple, where each element breathes with meaning, such doors are not mistakes. They are messages. Tonight, dreamer, we walk the thresholds of illusion, the doors that do not open in the physical world but open wide within the soul. They are called false doors, but that name betrays a modern misunderstanding. The ancients did not build them to deceive. They built them to remind. Let us return to the outer galleries where these mysterious carvings dwell. You pass beneath colonnades where light spills in long golden fingers across the floor. Pillars stand like monks in meditation. The air is warm, heavy with the scent of time. You reach a wall. Before you, a door. It stands as if inviting, but your hand cannot pass. This is no ordinary barrier. It is a symbolic threshold, a place where the living and the spirit world intersect. In the funerary architecture of ancient Khmer kings, false doors marked the spot where the soul was believed to pass through at the moment of death, not forward into the next room, but inward into the next world. And Angkor Wat, though often visited by tourists for its grandeur, is in essence a mausoleum, a temple mountain built not only to honor the gods, but to cradle the journey of a king's soul. Surya Mandua, who commissioned its creation, did not build it for the living. He built it for his crossing, for his becoming. And the false doors are the traces of that belief. Some are carved high above the sanctuaries, too elevated to reach. Others lie low, hidden behind alcoves, as though only those who kneel in humility may see them. Each one is framed with sacred geometry flames that symbolize pure makaras with open jaws devouring illusion, and guardians with swords not raised in anger, but in clarity. They say these doors do not open because they were never meant to open outward, only inward. One such door rests deep within the central sanctuary. Fewer pilgrims notice it, for it hides behind a veil of shadow, tucked into the northern wall of a lesser chamber. It bears no script, no grand narrative, only the faint carving of a spiral. Again, the spiral. It returns like a refrain in a dream. You placed your hand on the stone, and for a moment you feel warmth not from the sun, but from memory, not yours. The door does not move, but something within you shifts, because the purpose of the false door is not passage of the body but passage of awareness. It is the surrender of outward seeking, the invitation to step across a threshold between identity and essence, to let the self dissolve. In some traditions, these doors are known as liminal gate spaces. They are found across the world. The CA doors of Egyptian tombs, the blocked passageways in Inca temples, the miniature gates in Hindu always present, always closed, yet always watching. They are the places where prayers pass, where ancestors return, where time breathes through stone. A monk once told a traveler, if you press your forehead to the false door and breathe 3 times, you will dream not your dreams but the temples. You try it now. The stone is cool, the air, still you breathe once into the past, twice into the present, thrice into the unseen. And in the space behind your closed eyes, you see not a temple, but a forest, not carvings, but stars, not a king, but a child sitting in silence before a mountain of fire. And the door is no longer a wall. It is a mirror. You understand now what the monks meant. To pass through the false door is not to change your place in the world. It is to change the way you see it, to realize that all boundaries are drawn by the mind, that all seeking ends at the self, and that Angkor Wat, with its towers, corridors, and silent doors, is not just a place. It is a process, a ceremony in stone, a sacred remembering. You step back from the door. You bow not in ritual, but in gratitude. The temple watches and says nothing. It never had to. Its language is older than words. Beneath Angkor Wat, the earth holds its breath. There are whispers soft and uncertain that speak of chambers lying far below the temple's sacred stones. Caverns not carved by water or time, but by human hands, guided by divine vision. Hidden spaces said to hold treasures not of gold or jewels, but of memory, of ritual, of forgotten power. Tonight, dreamer, we descend into the myths that lie beneath the feet of kings. We begin with a legend told by the monks of the northern pagoda, tale older than most of the carvings above ground. They say that before the sandstone towers rose, before the moat circled the heart of the temple, there existed a cavern, a hollow space in the earth, where the spirit of the land itself whispered through limestone corridors. A cave of echoes and offerings, lit by oil lamps and chants, where those who sought the truth would descend not with questions, but with silence. It is called the buried heart. To some, it is myth, a tale told beneath starlight to curious but to others, archaeologists, adventurers, and seekers of the unseen, it is a place half glimpsed in fragments of evidence. They have found trapdoors sealed with sandstone, slabs of rock out of alignment with the perfect symmetry of Angkor's design. In the innermost courtyards, ground-penetrating radar has hinted at voids perfectly rectangular, lying beneath the central tower. They are too deep to explore without disturbing the temple's delicate soul, and so they remain untouched, but not unimagined. You walk now into the central sanctuary where once the golden statue of Vishnu stood, arms open to the rising sun. The air here feels different, thicker, older, as though saturated with breath from another world. At the center of the room, a raised platform. Beneath it, legend says, lies a shaft, not wide, not lit, just a narrow descent carved into the earth, leading to a chamber where only echoes remain. Some say it holds the ashes of the god. Others believe it is the womb of the temple, a space where new initiates once passed the night in solitude, emerging at dawn not as pilgrims, but as awakened ones. There are no visible stairs, but your mind descends nonetheless, and as you sink into stillness, the world above fades. Stone walls press inward, lit by memory. The air cools, the scent of wet dust and the ancient oil wafts upward. You are no longer standing, you are floating, in the dark, but not in fear, because the darkness here is not empty. It is full of prayers whispered by those long past, full of intentions left behind like footprints in soft sand, full of dreams that never reach the surface. In this chamber, imagined or really you see them, not with eyes, but with the inner gaze. Offerings laden rose, coconut bowls long dried, incense crumbled to powder, lotus petals petrified into stone, and in the center, a circle etched into the floor with a precision that speaks of purpose, a mandala of sacred geometry, marked with points that align not with the temple above, but with the stars beyond. This was no burial chamber. It was a mirror of the cosmos, built in negative space, as if the temple's reflection had been drawn into the bones of the earth. You sit within the circle. The silence is so deep it feels alive, and in that silence, something stirs. A soundless chime, a presence not of voice or form, but of essence. The monks say that to enter the buried heart is to face oneself, not the self of titles and tasks, but the eternal self, the one that remembers before birth, the one that waits beyond death. You feel it now, the slow, warm spiral within your chest, the rhythm of breath not tied to lungs, but to existence. And then you see her, a figure carved in shadow, a Devya goddess of the inner temple, eyes closed, hands open, seated in the same posture as the silent monk from before. She does not speak, but in her silence, you hear everything, and you realize, this is not a descent, it is a return. For the chamber beneath Angkor is not separate from the soul. It is the place within each of us that remains untouched, the sacred center, the unmoving mover. The temple that breathes beneath the temple. Slowly, you rise. You feel the earth beneath your feet again. The chamber fades. The stone platform above returns, and you are once more beneath the sky. But you carry something now, a stillness, a knowing, that beneath all seeking, beneath all structures there is a quiet center, waiting, always waiting. Water moves differently in Angkor Wat. It does not rush, it does not crash. It glides, curves, and reflects like memory itself. The great temple is surrounded by a vast moat, over 200 meters wide, filled with still water that rarely stirs. It is easy to overlook, especially by day, when the eye is drawn to the soaring towers and endless corridors. But to the ancients who built this place, the water was not a boundary. It was the beginning. Tonight, dreamer, we float into these sacred waters not as observers, but as pilgrims of the liquid sky. Step back, beyond the western entrance, and gaze across the moat. The temple rises from the water like a lotus blooming from the primordial sea. This image is no accident. In Hindu cosmology, the universe begins not with earth or fire, but with water. The cosmic ocean precedes all things. From it, creation emerges, and it is to it that all returns. To surround Angkor Wat with water was not a defensive measure. It was a declaration. This is no ordinary ground. The moat says, this is the center of the world. The Khmer word for this sacred arrangement is Bareya reservoir, not merely for irrigation, but for reflection, for ceremony, for connection to the divine. Across the Angkor region, barrays stretch for kilometers, massive man-made lakes that align with temples and the heavens. They've served as lifelines for agriculture, yes, but they also mirrored the cosmos. Angkor Wat's moat, perfectly rectangular, holds the entire temple in its still arms, and what is held becomes sacred. Let us walk the stone causeway now. Beneath your feet, the moat gently reflects the moon. No ripples, just calm. The reflection of the temple seems more vivid here, more real, as if it were the true Angkor, and the one you stand within is but its shadow. And listen, the water says nothing, but it remembers. Scholars who study the temple's hydrology have found something extraordinary: a hidden system of channels and underground culverts, carefully engineered to move water with balance and grace. These systems regulate not just the flow of rain, but the energy of space. They guide the visitor from chaos to calm, from movement to stillness. For the ancients understood that water is not only a tool, it is a teacher. The outer moat defines the sacred boundary. Inside, smaller pools called esradat, the temple grounds, each aligned with directional and elemental principles. These were once filled with water collected from the rains, used in rituals of purification and awakening. Pilgrims would bathe in these pools before entering the central sanctuary, washing away dust not just from the skin, but from the spirit. You step beside one now. Though many are dry today, their shape remains. You kneel at the edge, place your fingers along the stone lip, and you imagine the water still there, cool, pure, echoing the stars above. Some say the pools were aligned with constellations, that certain stars would rise directly above specific basins during holy days, turning each into a cosmic mirror. Others believe the waters once glowed faintly during the solstices, reflecting not just the sky, but the soul of the temple itself. In the central tower, the innermost chamber once housed a spring-fed well, a hidden font that rose from the earth, said to carry the breath of the nagas, the great serpent of transformation. Monks would draw this water at dawn, mix it with petals and prayers, and offer it to the rising sun. To drink this water was to be reborn. You walk now through the southern cloister, where once a sacred river of rainwater flowed. During the monsoon, the temple came alive with sound, not chaotic, but rhythmic, the water falling from carved gutters into stone troughs, echoing like bells into the hidden corridors. The rain did not disrupt worship. It completed it, because every drop was part of the offering, part of the remembering. In this moment, the air grows heavy with mist. You close your eyes and feel the moisture in the wind, the scent of moss and lotus, the slow drip from leaves to stone. And for a moment, you are inside the flow, not moving, but being moved, not seeking, but allowing. What water, the monks say, does not cling. It becomes. And that is the wisdom of Angkor's water, to teach us how to soften, how to carry without grasping, how to reflect without distortion, how to flow back to the sacred center without resistance. You rise from the edge of the ancient pool, and as you walk, you notice how your steps are slower, softer, as if part of you has joined the water, drifting silently between stone and sky. From a distance, Angkor Wat seems to float, a crown of stone rising from the jungle, its 5 towers like petals of an enormous lotus suspended between earth and sky. As you draw near, these towers grow taller, their tips tapering into sacred flame, each one pointing with quiet urgency toward the heavens. But they are not just symbols of majesty. They are steps in a journey. Tonight, dreamer, we ascend not with haste or expectation, but with breath and reverence into the sacred towers of Angkor Wat. These towers are not singular. They are plural, harmonious, arranged with sacred mathematics. The temple's highest point is the central tower, rising over 65 meters above the ground. Around it, 4 smaller towers stand in cardinal formation, creating a 5-peak silhouette that mirrors Mount Meru, the mythic axis of the universe in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. In this sacred mountain, the gods reside, and Angkor Wat, shaped in its image, becomes more than a building. It becomes a map, a ritual. Each tower, they say, is a layer of consciousness. The outer towers speak to the world of form, of action, of sacred duty. The inner towers call to the subtle realms, the world of thoughts, dreams, and deep longing. And the central tower, the silence beyond the story, the flame beyond the form. You approach it now, slowly. The steps grow steeper. They are narrow, almost vertical, designed not for ease, but for intention. The ancients did not believe in casual ascent. To climb to the divine required effort, humility, transformation. With each step, the sounds below begin to fall away. The laughter of tourists, the shuffle of sandals on stone, the distant rustle of leaves, all soften, all dissolve. You are climbing not just a tower, you are climbing yourself. The journey inward is mirrored in the journey upward. Halfway, you pause on a small landing. Below you, the courtyards lie in careful pattern like mandalas, unfolding in stone. The galleries form circles within squares. The pools reflect light like wandering stars. And above you, the sky opens wide, not a ceiling, but an invitation. You take another step, and another, until at last you reach the upper sanctuary. Here, the world is hushed. Not empty, but filled with quiet presence. The chamber is small, simple, timeless. Once, a statue stood here, Vishnu, in his 8-armed form, gazing to the west, symbol of protection, of order, of the keeper of time. Today, the statue is gone, but the space remains, and the silence within it is more powerful than any monument. The stone beneath your feet is warm. The air does not move, yet it feels alive. You stand at the very center of Angkor Wat, not just in space, but in meaning. From here, the entire temple radiates outward like a blooming lotus, like a solar flare, like a breath that never ends. The walls of the chamber are bare. No carvings, no tailies, because here, no more stories are needed. This is the place beyond symbol, the place of stillite. The monks say that when you stand in the central tower and close your eyes, you may hear the sound of the universe. Not with ears, but with a space between your thoughts. You try, and in the quiet, something begins. A hum, not of vibration, but of memory. The memory of being part of something whole, part of something vast and intimate, a breath in the chest of the divine. And as you listen, you feel a warmth rise within you. Not emotion, not thought, but presence. You do not need to name it, only to remain with it. The tower does not move, and yet you are lifted. Above time, above name, above destination. When you open your eyes, the light has changed, the sun has shifted, the shadows have turned, and the temple below is awake. But something in you is different now. You descend slowly, step by step, not returning, but completing a circle, because to climb a tower was never about height, it was about remembrance. And now that you remember, every corridor, every pool, every stone is new, alive, listening, like you. They are everywhere, in every corridor, on every pillar, within every shadowed alcove. Eyes that do not blink, hands that do not move. Farsis said in the eternal. They are the devotas, the celestial guardians of Angkor Wat, and they have been watching since the first stone was laid. Tonight, dreamer, we stand before these silent watchers, not as mere observers, but as pilgrims seeking their gaze. Step slowly now through the inner cloisters of the temple, where light falls softly across ancient carvings. The air is still, the stone cool. Around you, the walls are filled with forms, hundreds upon hundreds of female figures, each carved with delicate care, each unique. They stand with curved hips and narrow waists, adorned with jewelry and headdresses of impossible intricacy. Some gaze forward, others glance sideways, as if caught mid. Their lips hold a slight smile, not of joy or mystery, but of knowing. They are not decoration, they are memory. The devatas, also known as apsaras in their dancing form, are not simply symbols of beauty or grace. They are threshold beings, guardians of the sacred, bridges between this world and the unseen. And here, in Angkor Wat, they are legion. Over 1,800 have been counted across the temple's walls. No two are the same, each one carved by hand, each one a presence. Imagine the hands that shaped them, the sculptors who, day after day, etched the lines of cheekbones, the spirals of earrings, the folds of cloth. It is said the artisans spoke prayers as they worked, breathing life into each figure with mantra and devotion. The devatas are not passive, they are participants, witnesses, keepers of the threshold. As you walk among them, you begin to sense their arrangement is not random. They appear most frequently near entrances, near corners where two corridors meet, near windows where light touches their features in precise moments. They are there to watch, but also to reflect, because when you meet the gaze of a devata, something happens. You feel seen, not in the way of being looked at, but in the way of being known. The monks say that if you stand before a devata at dawn, in the quiet before first light, and match her gaze with steady breath, she will mirror your spirit, not your face, not your thoughts, but your essence. Let us pause now before one such figure. She stands alone in a shadowed alcove near the eastern gallery. Her face is calm. Her right hand is raised in a gesture not unlike a blessing or a pause. Her left hand rests against the wall, fingers curled slightly, as though holding something invisible. Look closely. There is wear on her breastplate. Smooth patches from centuries of touch, pilgrims pressing fingers in devotion, in awe, in silent requests. Above her, faint script in ancient Khmer traces the curve of the arch. It reads, "She who sees within," not a name, but a truth, because the devatas are more than stone. They are mirrors of the sacred feminine, not in gender alone, but in function. They receive, they hold, they reflect. In Vedic cosmology, the feminine aspect of the divine is Shakti, power in motion, form within formlessness, the vessel of creation. The devatas are embodiments of this principle, placed in the temple not to seduce or to guard, but to awaken. Their stillness is not absence, it is presence distilled. And around them stand others for Apolos, the male guardians, usually flanking gates, holding clubs or staffs, faces stern and focused. These are not violent figures. Their expressions are of strength tempered with compassion. They guard not against people, but against forgetfulness. They remind all who enter, this is a sacred space, not because of its stone or its size, but because of what it invites you to remember. You pass now through one such gate. Two Dvarapalas stand tall. They do not stop you, but they do weigh you, not your body or intention, and finding it sincere, they let you pass. Beyond them, another gallery of devatas. You walk slowly, meet their eyes, one by one, and you realize they are not watching for threats, They are watching for those who are ready to listen, to reflect, to awaken. You are not alone. Not here, not in the corridors of memory, not in the heart of this temple, because the watchers do not rest. They wait, not to protect Angkor Wat, but to protect the silence within it. That silence, once heard, becomes the true guardian of truth, of stillness, of you. To most, Angkor Wat appears as a temple, but to the ancient mind, it was a text, a sacred manuscript carved not in ink but in stone, not on paper but across walls, ceilings, and corridors, written in a language of form, number, and alignment. Every relief, every step, every corner turned was part of a sentence, a verse, a passage in a divine scripture not meant to be read with eyes alone, but with spirit. Tonight, dreamer, we open the pages of that living scroll, and let it read us. Begin in the long colonnades that encircle the temple's outer galleries. These are not merely walkways, they are sacred margins, boundaries of contemplation. As you walk them slowly, observe the way light spills across the flagstones. At certain hours, the shadows fall in perfect geometry, dividing space into unseen quadrants, as though the sun were a scribe tracing invisible lines across the earth. Here the carvings unfold like paragraphs. The bas-reliefs on the walls are not random decorations. They are chronological and symbolic, structured with precise meaning. On the southern gallery, you find the Battle of Lanka, Rama and his army of Vanaras waging war against the demon king Ravana. The scene flows for nearly 50 meters, every figure in motion, every detail sharpened by purpose. But look closer, not just at the action, but the repetition. Rama appears again and again, multiplied beyond narrative necessity, because repetition in sacred art is not redundancy, it is invocation. To see the form again and again is to remember, to mirror the mantra, to walk within the chant. And as you walk the gallery, your movement through space becomes part of the reading. You are no longer a viewer, you are a verse. At the western gallery, the churning of the ocean of milk returns, this time not as legend alone, but as cosmic metaphor. The Devas and Asuras pull the serpent in opposite directions, and from the chaos, Amriti, the nectar of immortality. To the ancients, this was more than story, it was instruction. The ocean is the inner self, the churning is meditation, the nectar is awakening. The message is clear. The path to divine essence comes through effort, struggle, balance. This is how the temple teaches, not through rules, through rhythm. Now step into the inner sanctum. Within its dark walls lies a chamber marked not with obvious symbols, but with geometry. The floor stones here are arranged with mathematical intention, squares nested within squares, each ratio corresponding to the body of man, the breath of the universe. These measurements are not modern, they are ancient. They align with principles found in the Vasta Shastra, the sacred architecture texts of India, which describe how to shape space so that it resonates with life force. The height of the central tower, the length of the sanctum, the width of the outer wall, all align with units known as angulars, and with celestial rhythms. The lunar cycle, the solar year, the rising of Venus, the orbit of Jupiter. Angkor Wat is a clock, a calendar, a cosmic diagram encoded into the land. But the temple is also a mirror of the human form. In the Upanishads and Tantric texts, the body is described as a temple, the spine is the central tower, the chakras are the breath is the flow of pilgrims through the corridors of the self. To walk Angkor Wat, then, is to walk yourself. Each step an exhale, each gallery a memory, each chamber a revelation. Even the staircases, narrow and steep, speak of the path inward, the climb toward the crown, the thousand-petal lotus of awakening. At the base of one such stair, carved discreetly on a pillar, lies a yantra, a geometric diagram used in meditation. It is small, easy to miss, but it holds great meaning. A triangle within a circle, surrounded by petals. It is the map of stillness, a reminder that all journeys through stars, through temples, through lifetimes ultimately spiral inward, back to source. You kneel before the yantra, let its shape enter your breath. You are no longer outside the scroll, you are inside its syllables, and they are inside you. Because the greatest truth the temple reveals is this: the sacred is not found only in the heavens, it is written in the walls, and in you. When the sun slips beyond the western moat and the sky fades into amethyst, Angkor Wat becomes something else. No longer a place of footsteps and photographs, no longer a monument admired and explained, but a presence, a breathing, dreaming temple. Tonight, Gemma, we return after dusk and walk not through history but through hush. The last of the day's travelers have gone, the pathways are empty, the cries of vendors silent. Only the wind speaks now, rustling gently through the palm fronds that stand like sentinels along the ancient causeway. You step barefoot onto the stone. The warmth of the day still lingers beneath your feet. Above, stars begin to appear, faint at first, then many. Orion, the Pleiades, the soft trail of the Milky Way drifting across the ink of night. And below them, the temple glows faintly, not from lights but from memory, You pass through the first gate. Its arch casts a deep shadow. Inside, your breath echoes softly. The torches are gone. The carvings disappear into darkness. But the temple remembers. It guides you not with light, but with presence. You feel the curve of the walls. You sense the opening of the corridors. You follow, not sight, but intuition. This is when the spirits of the stones awaken not to frighten, but to breathe. The devatas seem to shimmer faintly in the moonlight, their eyes soft with knowing, their hands mid-gesture as though frozen in a dance the stars once taught them. You reach the central courtyard. The towers loom above, black against the heavens, like mountains carved from sky. Here silence settles thick. It does not weigh. The air carries a scent lotus, dust, rain remembered from earlier hours, and in this silence, the temple begins to dream, not in motion, but in rhythm. You feel it in your chest, a slow pulse, a gentle hum in the soles of your feet, a stillness so complete that it becomes sound. They say the stones retain echoes, that the chants of ancient monks, whispered for centuries, have left impressions in the corridors like footprints in soft sand, and that at night, when the temple breathes deepest, those echoes rise. You do not hear them, you feel them, a low vibration, a mantra without syllables, a call that asks nothing, only presence. You sit now, cross-legged on the stone. The temple opens within you. You see the corridors not as paths but as memories. The carvings become symbols, the windows, stars, the towers, silent prayers, and you understand. Angkor Wat is not dreaming of the past. It is dreaming of you, of every seeker who enters with stillness in their steps, of every soul who pauses long enough to listen, to feel, to become. This temple was not built to preserve history. It was built to awaken eternity, and eternity is never loud. It is this breath, this pause, this gentle rising of the moon. The light touches the edge of the central tower. The stars ripple in the waters of the moat, and for one long moment, the temple and the sky are one. You close your eyes. You do not need to see. You are inside the dream now, and the dream is inside you. Stay here as long as you like. There is no gate to close, no guide to rush you. Only presence, only peace, only the hum of a sacred silence that will echo in you long after you've walked away. Before the statues fell, before the echoes faded, before the tourists walked beneath the archways with cameras and sandals, there were rituals. Rituals as steady as breath. Rituals that shaped the rhythm of Angkor Wat as surely as its stones. They were the unseen architecture, the living geometry that moved through its galleries like a quiet river of devotion. Tonight, dreamer, we'll retrace those vanished paths, not with reenactments, but with reverence. Let us begin in the Eastern Gallery, where the morning sun once broke like a wave upon the faces of silent worshippers. At first light, monks in saffron robes would gather at the temple's outer rim, their bare feet pressing cool stone, their hands folded in prayer. They would enter in silence, step by step, each corridor a verse, each doorway a breath. They walked not to arrive, but to align. The design of Angkor Wat was no accident. It was crafted to guide ritual movement. The galleries form concentric rings. The walkways spiral inward. The very act of walking the temple was a meditation, a purification of thought through form. The pilgrims entered from the east, the direction of birth and light. They moved westward toward the setting sun, toward dissolution and rebirth. Each step mirrored the journey of the soul. Along the way, they would pause at stations of offering, small niches in the wall where incense burned in long trails, where petals floated in brass bowls, where oil lamps shimmered with tiny flames. These rituals were not meant to please the gods. They were meant to unveil them, not as beings above, but as truths within. In the Hall of 1,000 Buddhas, now stripped of its original statue, worshippers once lit rows of candles that stretched into golden dusk. The smoke curled upward into silence, and the air was filled with chant, not loud, not ecstatic, but steady. The mantra Om Namo Bhagave, a calling not of sound but of remembrance. And then there were at the Esra, the sacred pools. Monks would bless water before sunrise. They stirred it gently with lotus stems, whispered prayers into its surface, and anointed pilgrims on the brow, the throat, the heart, not to mark them, to reveal them. Further inward, the inner sanctuary hosted the most intimate rites. Here, in the soft hush of twilight, the Brahmins performed ceremonies rarely seen by the outer world. Offerings of milk, honey, ghee, and rice were placed at the foot of the linga, the sacred pillar symbol of divine unity. The linga was not worshipped as a god. It was honored as a point of stillness, a symbol of that which does not change, a reminder that beneath the shifting forms of body and thought, something eternal waits. Even the tower itself was part of the rite. Pilgrims climbed it not to conquer but to surrender, to release the outer self, the ego, the noise of identity, step by step, until they reached the silent sanctum above. And in that silence, they did not speak. They listened to the stone, to the echo of the temple remembering them, These rituals were woven not just into the temple but into time. Festivals aligned with the stars, rites of fire on solstices, rites of light during equinox. Each ceremony synchronized with the motion of the heavens, with the opening of the lotus, with the tides of the unseen. Even the drums once heard across the moat, slow, steady, deep, marked the hours like a heartbeat, not to count time, but to keep it sacred. But what of today? The rituals are no longer performed. The chants have quieted. The flames are unlit, but the stones remember. They hold the imprint of each footfall, the echo of each verse, the warmth of each offering. And when you walk slowly, softly, with breath as your only song, the temple begins to hum again, as if the ritual never ended, as if it waits not to be restarted but remembered. Because the temple was never dependent on priests, the ritual was never dependent on form. It was always about presence, and in your stillness, the rite begins anew. They do not blink, they do not roar, yet they remain silent, watchful, eternal, all around Angkor Wat at gates, in corners, beneath columns, atop towers, creatures carved from stone stand guard. Some are drawn from the jungles of ancient Cambodia. Others arrive from the realms of myth, carried across time by sacred stories, given form by hand and chisel. Tonight, dreamer, we walk among these sacred beasts, not as spectators but as fellow guardians of the mystery. Let us begin with the naga, the serpent, winding, coiled, majestic. At the very entrance to Angkor Wat, long balustrades stretch like serpents uncoiling through time. Their heads rise in fanned crowns 7-9, or even more each, with flaring hoods and knowing eyes. Their tails vanish into the corridors behind them. These are nagas, protectors of thresholds, symbols of water, fertility, transformation. In Hindu and Buddhist cosmology, the naga is not merely a serpent, it is a divine presence, half spirit. It lives between worlds, beneath the earth, within rivers, curled around the roots of trees and temples alike. The naga does not threaten. It invites transformation. To pass beside the naga is to begin the shedding not of skin, of illusion. And so they wait at Angkor's gates not to bar entry, but to test readiness. You step between them now, feel their breathless stillness, and you are reminded. Transformation begins in silence. Next, the Garuda, part eagle, part human, wings outstretched. You see him carved high above doorways, talons clutching serpents, body poised mid-flight. Garuda is the vehicle of Vishnu, a being of the skies, a force of courage, clarity, and ascent. Where the naga coils down, Garuda lifts up. Together they form the cycle of descent and elevation. Earth and sky, substance and spirit, they are not enemies. They are dance partners in the ritual of balance. In some parts of the temple, naga and Garuda intertwine locks not in battle, but in rhythm. They hold one another, mirror one another, remind us that every elevation begins in the depths. Walk further and you'll find the singer stone lions that flank stairways and watch from temple thresholds. They crouch with muscles coiled, mouths parted in silent roar, eyes wide. These lions are not animals. They are symbols of Dharma, cosmic order, righteous protection, the steadiness of being. In Buddhist and Hindu art, lions are often guardians of the sacred. Their roar is said to awaken truth, to echo across illusion like thunder through a dream. But in Angkor, the lions do not roar. They wait. They invite the seeker to bring that roar within, to find the lion's strength not in voice, but in silence that stands firm. Now pause beside the elephants. Some are carved small, almost hidden in corner reliefs. Others stand massive and proud in the outer temples of the greater Angkor complex. These creatures, slow, grounded, gentle, represent memory, stability, and spiritual power. The elephant does not move quickly, but when it moves, the earth remembers. And the temple built upon the rhythm of memory embraces their presence as sacred reminders to walk with weight, with intention, with care. There are other creatures here too. Dragons, unseen but suggested, colossuses of time and devourers of illusion grinning above archways. Makara, mythic beasts combining crocodile, fish, and elephant guarding the waters, shaping the fountains, curled along stair rails like guardians of the deep. Each creature is more than mythology. Each is a symbol encoded in stone, not to tell a story, but to evoke a state, a remembrance, a way of being. You walk now through the inner gallery, the stars overhead, your breath slowing. You pass beneath a row of columns where lions once stood on pedestals now worn by centuries. You pause, place your hand on the stone foot of one such guardian. The surface is cool, but not cold, and in that touch, something stirs, not a sound, but a presence. These beasts do not live in fables, they live in you. The serpent of shedding, the bird of ascent, the lion of truth, the elephant of steady steps. They are not guardians of a temple, they are the reflections of your inner thresholds. And as you pass by, each nods silently, knowingly. The beasts remain, because you are still becoming. There are histories, and then there are origin stories. in the cracks between chronicles and stone. Myths rise like mist, neither holy truth nor holy fiction, but something softer, older, the kind of story told not to explain, but to remember what can only be felt. Angkor Wat, the temple of balance and light, was not always said to be built by kings. Some say it was built by gods, others say by dreamers, and a few whispered that it was the work of celestial architects, summoned not through war or command, but through vision. Tonight's dreamer, we drift into these whispered beginnings. Long before the 12th century, long before the Khmer Empire carved roads through jungle and raised lotus towers into the sky, the land was forest, river, cloud, and in this land lived a hermit. So the story goes. He was called Kandiniya Sage, a deep meditation, who lived not for power, but for stillness. He fasted beneath trees, spoke with the stars, listened to the silence between birdsong and rain. One night, beneath a moonless sky, Kondinya dreamt of a serpent, goddess, her body curled around the earth, her hair woven with light. She came not with thunder, but with eyes filled with sorrow. She spoke, "This land is waiting. Build the place where the heavens may rest." He awoke and followed the dream, and at dawn, he reached a clearing where the trees bowed inward, and the birds flew in circles above. There, he found stone not placed, not carved, but risen, as if the earth had dreamed it first. He laid no foundation. He simply listened. Others came, called not by invitation, but by dreams of their own. Some brought tools, some brought chants, some brought silence. Together they built, not with blueprints, but with remembering. The towers rose as if they had always been. The corridors curved as if they followed thought, and the carvings appeared as if the stone itself knew what it wanted to say. Another version of the story says it was Indra, king of the heavens, who built Angkor Wat in a single night. For his son, a god made flesh, with lightning as hammer and clouds as scaffolding, he summoned the temple from sky to ground. Some say he finished only moments before dawn, and that, if you arrive at the temple just as the first light touches the central tower, you may see a flicker, a glint, not of sunlight but of the divine forge still cooling. Yet another tale speaks of celestial engineers, beings from the star systems, not of this world, who descended in fire not to conquer, but to teach. They showed sacred geometry to the old kings, taught the balance of stars and stones, and then vanished, leaving only structures that never crumble. The monks do not confirm these stories, but they do not deny them either. They smile and say, "The temple came when we needed it." And so the myth becomes a mirror. You wander the eastern gallery now, where moss clings to stone and the jungle presses in like breath. The shadows stretch long, the silence deepens, and in that silence, you ask yourself, not aloud, not even in thought, what is a dream? Is it the mind's fantasy, or is it a memory from before memory? Because when you walk Angkor Wat slowly enough, it begins to feel familiar, as if you've walked these stones before, in another life, in another form, as if the carvings speak not to the eyes, but to the soul's ancient recall. Perhaps the temple was not built by gods. Perhaps it was built by those who remembered they were divine. Perhaps the true builders were not kings or sages, but the dream itself, a dream that needed form, that needed stone and corridor and light, a dream that lives in you, still waiting to be remembered. So tonight, let the myths breathe, let the serpent goddess coil softly around your rest, let the stars whisper of ancient hands shaping towers in sleep. Let the temple remain, not as proof, but as presence, the presence of a dream that still rises from the forest, stone by stone, soul by soul. Angkor Wat does not keep time as we do. It does not count hours with bells or days with calendars. It remembers time. It breathes time. It is time. Tonight, dreamer, we step into the slow rhythm hidden beneath its stone, the sacred pulse that echoes not with seconds, but with cosmic cycles, turning silently like the stars above and the breath within. Begin once more at the central axis, the sacred path that leads from the outer causeway to the temple's heart. This path, broad and unwavering, is more than a route. It is a timeline, a story inscribed not with words, but with movement. As you walk it, you do not merely approach the divine, you pass through ages. The ancient builders encoded in Angkor Wat, the great cycles of Hindu cosmology, flourishing, decline, and renewal. Each yuga spans thousands upon thousands of human years, and the temple's proportions mirror these. The central tower, rising with symmetry and solemn grace, stands as Mount Meru, the eternal axis around which these yugas turn. But more than symbol, it is measurement. Scholars who studied the temple's layout discovered astonishing correlations. The dimensions of the outer galleries, the lengths of the corridors, the spacing of towers, they correspond with numerical values found in sacred texts like the Vedas and Puranas. The measurements point to the Kali Yuga, the present age, an age of disconnection, of forgetting, of the long night before the dawn. And yet, the temple does not mourn this age. It holds it compassionately, patiently. It waits, because every decline carries a seed of renewal. and every visitor who walks its sacred rhythm consciously or not participates in that cycle. You step now into the eastern cloister, where shadow meets stone in perfect harmony. The floor beneath you is worn smooth not by rain, but by feet, by centuries of souls moving, step by step, through their own personal cycles. Some came in joy, some in grief, some in silence, but all were walking the spiral along, remembering, in ancient thought, time was not a line. It was a circle, a wheel, a lotus opening, a breath expanding and returning. Angkor Wat embodies this. Its concentric galleries spiral inward, each a world of its own, until the pilgrim reaches the innermost sanctum, the point of stillness, the unmoving mover. To move through the temple is to reenact the soul's journey: birth, growth, disillusionment, silence, return. At dawn, on the equinox, when the sun rises directly in line with the central tower, a golden beam passes along the axis and illuminates the central sanctum with perfect clarity. It happens only for a moment, but in that moment, the divine aligns with the mortal. The cosmos breathes through the corridor, and the temple becomes the sky. You sit now in that corridor, eyes closed, listening not with ears, but with breath. You feel it, the pulse. It is not your heart, it is older than your body. It is the temple's rhythm, a slow, vast tide rising and falling beneath the stone. It does not urge, it does not pull. It simply reminds that every age, no matter how dark, will turn, that every forgetting will meet its moment of remembrance. That time is not your enemy, it is your echo. You rise slowly as if from deep water. Step forward, one breath, one moment, and the temple, ancient and vast, turns with you. Because you are not walking through time, time is walking through you. There are questions that cling to Angkor Wat like morning mist. Who truly built it? Why does it face west when nearly all other temples face east? What secrets lie in the sealed chambers beneath its sanctum? Why do its measurements echo the stars, the sun, the moon, and the great ages of time? These questions have been asked for centuries, and yet the temple never answers. It does not explain, it offers, it stands, it breathes, and in its silent presence, it teaches a deeper wisdom. Tonight, dreamer, we leave behind answers, and enter the space where only presence remains. You sit in a quiet chamber, now one of many scattered across Angkor's vast form. The air is thick with stillness. No carvings adorn these walls. No statues remain, just smooth stone, and the echo of breath returning to its source. This is the final gallery, not a place of passage, but of pause. And as you sit here, you begin to feel the truth. That this temple was not built to be understood. It was built to be remembered. There are stories within its walls that no voice can speak. Rituals once performed that left no trace but vibration. Visitors long forgotten whose tears and prayers soaked into the stone, becoming part of its slow heartbeat. And then there are the unmarked places. Doorways that lead to shadow. Windows sealed with time. Symbols whose meaning has been lost yet still resonate in some unspoken part of you. Perhaps these mysteries were never meant to be solved. Perhaps they were meant to be held, cradled like a question that has become sacred. The monks who dwell near Angkor do not seek to interpret it. When asked, they simply smile and say, "You do not need to understand the moon to walk in its light." So you sit now, not to interpret but to feel. You run your fingers along the smooth edge of a pillar. You breathe with the walls. You close your eyes. And in that stillness, a strange knowing blooms. The temple is not speaking to your mind. It is singing to your soul. In tones too low for the ear, too old for the page, too deep for thought. You open your eyes and see nothing new. And yet everything has changed. The shadows fall the same. The columns stand as they always have. But now, the space is full. With presence, with meaning, with truth that does not need to be named. This is the final veil. Not of secrecy, but of acceptance. That some things, perhaps the most sacred things, are not given as facts. They are given as silence. And it is in that silence that the temple opens. Fully, completely. You walk now through one last corridor. The air is cooler. The night outside waits. You do not rush. You do not reach. You simply walk. And with each step, the mystery deepens not as confusion, but as peace. The peace of not needing to know, of only needing to be. And Angkor Wat, vast and silent, watches you go. It does not call, it does not cling, because it knows something you now begin to understand, that the temple never ends. It is with you now, in your breath, in your pause, in the quiet between one thought and the next, in the still, slow spiral that leads you back to yourself. You are the corridor. You are the tower. You are the watcher. You are the silence. And the temple, once visited, never truly lets you leave. You have seen the towers glow with starlight. You have heard the chants that leave no echo. You have touched the silence beneath the stone. And now, dreamer, it is time to return, but not as the one who first entered these gates. Because Angkor Wat, vast and ancient, does not leave you unchanged. Tonight, we walk the path backward, not to erase, but to integrate. to carry the temple with you, not as memory, but as rhythm. Begin in the inner sanctum, the still center, the place where the light never speaks, but always listens. You turn slowly, stepping once more into the sacred spiral, leaving the central chamber not with reluctance, but with reverence. The corridors open again. The outer galleries await, but they no longer seem distant. They are part of you now. You pass the silent devatas with a gentle nod. You trace your fingers along the nagas' back once more. You hear the faintest rustle in the trees beyond the moat, and it sounds like a page turning, like a dream closing softly behind you. And yet, nothing closes. Everything remains open, because the temple was never a structure. It was a state of being. You reach the causeway, the same long stone path that first led you in. But the wind is different now. It brushes against your face with recognition, like an old friend. Above, the stars shimmer. You glance back, and there it is, Angkor Wat, towering, silent, alive, not demanding anything from you, only offering. Still, they say when you leave a sacred place, you must never look back. But here, it is different. Here, you are meant to gaze once more, not to hold on, but to receive the final gift. The understanding that nothing is left behind. You carry the silence with you now. The spiral still turns within your chest. The reflections of moonlight in the moat still ripple behind your eyes. You are the seeker in the sanctuary. You are the question and the quiet. The devatas will remain. The lions will stand guard. The false doors will dream behind stone. And you will walk the world differently, softer, more slowly, as though each step is a chant, each breath a threshold, each pause a return. This is how the temple travels, not in stone, but in the quiet wake of those who remember. You cross the final gate. The earth feels soft beneath your feet. The night air is cool, and you know, with a peace beyond language, you are still inside the dream, because the dream was never the temple. The dream was you, awakening. Angkor Wat does not dwell only in the past, though its stones are worn by centuries, though vines have curled softly through its outer temples, though time has traced its signature across every block and carving. The temple lives on. It lives in whispers, yes, but also in hands, in breath, in chants that still rise before dawn, in the rhythms of monks, artists, dancers, and silent wanderers who carry its light forward. Tonight, dreamer, we listen to the echoes still unfolding. Let us begin with the monks. At nearby pagodas and hidden monasteries scattered throughout the Angkor region, orange-robed figures still rise at first light. Their days are woven in simple rhythms, sweeping leaves, boiling rice, reciting sutras beneath weathered prayer flags. Some of them walk barefoot through the temple at sunrise, not as caretakers, but as listeners. They say little, but when they chant, the air itself seems to remember. The old rituals may no longer fill the temple with thousands of petals and golden offerings, but the intention remains, whispered, unbroken. There are also the dancers. In the cities beyond the forest, young girls still train in the classical Khmer arts. Their fingers curve just like the ups, their wrists bend like the carvings, their eyes soft, deliberate, speak of stories older than language. When they perform in twilight, before tourists and elders, it is not performance alone, it is transmission. The devatas carved in stone are not frozen, they are remembered, reawakened, embodying the beauty of the sacred, the balance of gesture and grace. And in these living dances the temple breathes again. Then there are the artists, stone carvers who use the same tools once held by their ancestors, just hands, rhythm, breath. In quiet workshops they recreate broken lintels, restore sacred heads stolen long ago, etch new prayers into old styles. They do not copy, they converse with the temple, with its memory, with a silence that still hums beneath the stone. And what of the children, those who run barefoot near the temple grounds, chasing dragonflies and calling to one another in laughter? They know, even without knowing. They grow beside the moat. They nap in hammocks hung between temple trees. They hear the stories from elders beneath starlit skies. And in their bones, the rhythm of Angkor pulses, unseen, but certain. Because Angkor Wat is not just a ruin, it is a presence that chooses to remain. It does not cling to its past glory. It does not demand attention. It simply endures, quietly, like truth, like memory, like the breath between a question and its answer. And in every visitor who walks its corridors with reverence, in every monk who chants without audience, in every dancer who lifts her fingers in the gesture of a blooming lotus, the temple rises again. So when you step into the world, dreamer, remember, you are not leaving Angkor Wat behind. You are carrying it forward, in your stillness, in your gaze, in the way you listen before you speak, because the temple's story is not over. It walks now in those who remember to move with grace. It is time, not to end, but to return to the stillness from which all stories rise. Tonight, dreamer, you have walked among shadows and stars. You have climbed towers shaped like lotus buds, traced serpents through corridors, bowed before silence deeper than stone. And now, As the temple grows quiet in your mind, we arrive at the final gate, not a gate of stone, but a threshold within. You sit beneath the imagined arch of Angkor Wat's highest tower. Above, stars bloom like flowers in the dark. Below, the earth holds your breath like a sacred secret. All around you, the temple begins to dissolve not in disappearance, but in integration. Each gallery becomes a memory. Each carved devata becomes a breath. Each shadowed doorway becomes a part of your own inner sanctum. And here, at this gentle closing, the truth is simple. Angkor Wat was never outside of you. It was always waiting within. You are the corridor carved by time. You are the tower rising in stillness. You are the naga coiled and listening. You are the echo returning again and again, not to repeat but to remember. The myth that built the temple still builds you, slowly, gracefully, with stone and silence. And now, with your eyes closed, you feel it. The temple is not asleep, it is breathing, and in your breathing, it endures. Each inhale, a passage. Each exhale, a gate. You walk through the halls of your own stillness. You sit at the altar of your own presence. You light a lamp in the inner sanctum of your being, not for sight, but for warmth. You do not need to carry anything more. The journey is complete. The temple remembers you, and you remember yourself, not as a visitor, but as the one who never truly left. Because the sacred was never in the stone alone. It was always in the way you paused, the way you listened, the way you were. Now, dreamer, let go. Let the pillars fade into soft gold. Let the towers dissolve into starlight. Let the corridors fold into silence, and sleep in the rhythm of the ancient. May your rest be deep. May your dreams be gentle. May you walk tomorrow with the grace of a temple beneath your feet. Until we meet again in the sacred hush between stories. Sleep well, and let the temple remain within you. And so, dreamer, we arrive at the quiet shore, where temple meets sky, and story becomes breath. You have walked among shadows, towers, and time, not to gather knowledge but to remember stillness. The stones of Angkor no longer stand before you, but within you each corridor a chamber of the soul. Each step, a rhythm echoing the sacred. Each silence, a mirror of the divine. If this journey brought you peace, let the quiet linger a little longer. Leave a soft touch, perhaps a like, or join our circle of dreamers by subscribing. Let us drift together each night, through forgotten cities, starlit myths, and the breath of ancient wonders. Tell us, from what corner of the world did you walk with us tonight? Your presence matters, even in the hush. Together we form a temple without walls. Until the next whisper of history calls us to return, may your rest be deep, may your dreams remember the sacred, and may the temple always walk beside you. Sleep well, and let the mystery remain.